Hello and welcome to the show today with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Richie Power and Ciaran Carey on this lovely Thursday afternoon. We're all stuck inside talking hurling. There's no point in waiting around about what topic we'll get to first, Ciaran. We might as well start with Peter Duggan, Rory Hayes and Ciaran Fahey. They're all free to play this weekend. What are your thoughts on it and the fact that apparently it's down to a technicality that was flagged by Galway GA, which said that the meeting which proposed the suspensions was held online, and that doesn't constitute a meeting of the CCCC or any GA subcommittee.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm pleased, very pleased with the three boys, anyway. They have an opportunity, to play in the matches, especially so deep in the championship. Yeah, and I suppose my own thoughts on it really is, if there was a level of consistency in the past, and that was the pattern in the last number of months, then you'd be kind of nodding it and saying, yeah, it's fine. But it wasn't the case, and hijacking three players like that, missing the opportunity of playing a game of hurling, to me would be wrong. And I suppose most managements, they're kind of pulling forwards aside and pulling the back defenders aside, and they're showing them where they're doing well, and they're probably pointing out where you could improve here a small little bit. And if we to do that every day, and the CCTV had to do that every day, Shane, you'd have incidents after every match. And I suppose common sense is kind of coming out to play here. And as I said, I'm thrilled for the three boys, and great decision in proper order.
Yeah, what do you think, Richie? I mean, the Ciaran Fahey, well, to be honest, they were all kind of red cards in a way, but we can say the law of the land and say, well, you can see that Duggan was saying, get off me to Finn. We can say that Rory Hayes has been held by Flanagan, and we could say that other incidents weren't dealt with. But I suppose all three of them, especially Fahey, they were red cards.
Yeah, I suppose on one day they were a red card, Shane, and on the other possibly not. I suppose Ciaran Fahey will probably count himself probably the luckiest out of all three, after the stamping incident. So, fair play to the Galway County Board. They must have spent a long time going through the rule book or whatever rules are in place with regards to that. But look, on the other side of it, yeah, look, it's great to see the three lads not miss the weekends. As Ciaran said, so deep into the championship quarter-final stage, winner takes all on Saturday in Thurles. So you need your best players on show. And, I suppose, luckily for both teams, they have that. And it's a huge boost for Clare in particular, because for me, Hayes has probably been one of the best, if not the best, up there with probably Finn, the cornerback in the country this year so far. And then obviously Peter Duggan up front. You take Peter out up front, and it makes the Clare threat that little bit, I suppose, easier to deal with from a Wexford point of view. So, and then obviously Ciaran Fahey as well has been a big player for Galway this year. So look, it'll be a controversial decision, but the decision's made now, and the four teams have to get on with it and get ready for Saturday.
Ciaran, do you think that for Clare, everyone has been patting them on the back since they lost the game, and it's a strange one to put it this way, but it's almost like you nearly hope the defeat doesn't go to their heads, just because they did so well. Then there's been all this talk about the bans and all this kind of stuff. Could that distract them now and derail them coming into this game at Wexford?
No, I don't think so. But usually what happens really when these guys get a break, right? And I suppose if they learn from it, it won't highlight itself. But usually it tends to highlight itself down the tracks anyway. But if there's huge learning, they'll stamp it out and, take the break and on merit. But no, I wouldn't see it as a distraction, Shane. And I suppose for me, the two games this weekend really are, I suppose, the hardest ones to call up to date. You're looking at the form on both sides, and I'm kind of saying to myself, with Clare, right? They did come up with two massive performances back-to-backs with Limerick, and then I'm kind of saying, right, that's a spicy game, and that happens every year anyway. Can they bring that same intensity and performance to a different colour jersey? And if they can, I give them a great shout, but I suppose the question mark still lies.
Yeah, do you want to take up that point, Richie, in terms of being distracted by outside voices about, this talk of the suspensions, about how great you were in a game that you lost, and that they have to pick it up from there and try and win this quarter-final?
Try and win it, yeah. Look, I'm sure Brian and the lads, Shane, wouldn't have allowed any of that to kind of creep into the group. At the end of the day, they were beaten in the Munster final. They had to lick their wounds and go back to the training field on the Tuesday night. And obviously, they probably would have been made aware of it quite early after the Munster final that the two boys were after being cited. You know, so Brian would have probably planned for that. You know, the boys would have kept training without a shadow of a doubt. So I don't see it creeping into the Clare setup. You know, I think if anything, they can build on this, and, you know, getting the two boys back this week is a major boost to the group as well. You know, and I think they would have planned all along over the last 2 weeks that the two boys would be available to play. I don't think, you know, I think we've seen it in the past that if they had to go to Croke Park Friday night at midnight, they would have went and probably won. So the boys would have played Saturday no matter what. So I don't think so. I think Brian has these boys well primed for the weekend. But I do, you know, it is a banana skin because Wexford have been a bogey team for Clare over the past couple of seasons, you know, and particularly when Davy was in charge of Wexford. So, you know, they have to be aware of that too. And they have to bring their A game. I think they'll have to be, you know, definitely 90-95% of what they were in the Munster final to beat Wexford at the weekend, because I suppose Wexford coming off, you know, the big win in Nolan Park and then obviously getting over Kerry last weekend, they're probably in bonus territory at this stage. And, you know, that's a great way to be going into an All-Ireland quarter-final, you know, knowing that if you win, great, but if you lose, people will probably say, you know, they had a good season up until that.
Actually, the record is Clare have won the last 3 games. And before that, in 2014, Wexford dethroned Clare as All-Ireland champions. They drew the game before that. So I think 4 of the last 6 Clare have actually won, and there's a draw and a win for Wexford in there. So I think actually they kind of fancy themselves in this fixture, Richie, a small bit. And one thing I worked out the stats that Tony Kelly in his 6 championship games against Wexford has scored 141. So, you know, how do you tie this man down? And 17 of those are placed balls, so it's 124 from 6 games from open play.
Yeah, it's quite a record, isn't it? You know, how do you tie this man down? That's the $1 million question, and you know that's going to be the interesting thing on Saturday when we see the teams line up. Like, who is going to pick up Tony Kelly? And you know, for me, you have to go and try and live in this guy's togs. You know, like whether, you know, wherever he goes on the field, you're right there beside him. You're breathing down his neck, and he knows that you're there. So who? I know we'll put up a slide later on. You reckon Damien Reck will probably the best man for the job. You know, and listen, Darragh Egan will be talking to Damien Reck this week and say, right, Damien, you need sacrifice your game. Like, I don't care what you have to do, but sacrifice your game. You know, obviously, you know, not foul, don't give away frees, but don't worry about your game. Your job this weekend is to keep Tony Kelly quiet. Now, that's a massive, massive job, and I'm sure Damien Reck, if it is Damien, will be going to bed thinking of Tony Kelly for the next couple of nights anyway.
Would that have bothered you, Ciaran, back in the day when you would have played in the backs, if you were told you have to mark this guy? I know in general you were probably cool as a breeze, but was there ever a time where you were like, you have to mark, let's say, the marquee guy, and it's getting to you a small bit?
Yeah, but I suppose there are different times, because, you know, now it's kind of acceptable for 10 or 12 to getting 4 or 5 points because the system is allowing that. And I suppose the big call here is, if Wexford are going to go with a system, then there's a good chance Kelly will probably repeat what he did. But I believe there's only one way to stop him, and you have to go a small bit down the road as Bold School. Exactly what Richie said. You have to mark him, and you have to defend him correctly, and you have to do that for the hour. Yeah, Ciaran, I suppose my frame of mind really when I was centre back really was the bigger the name, the bigger the fish was the man I wanted. And I suppose that brought you to another level. And then you did your level best then to defend him, and plus have a role in the game on top of that. And then you're kind of, it wasn't the fashionable thing to say, but then you're sweeping behind 5 and 7 at the time. So you had to do a lot at 6 back then. But yeah, as I said, you always know the loose player, right? And you take Tony Sullivan from Cork. You know, there's only one way to play him. You can't get into the ball. You have to be out in front of him all the time. And then you might come across Declan Ryan. You might have to go 50-50 or go and just tip away. So depending on what presents itself, Shane, on any given moment and day, you have to be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, absolutely true. So the games last weekend, Wexford saw off Kerry 330 to 18 points. Cork beat Antrim by 327 to 219. Now, I watched both of these games. Richie, it's probably not unsurprising that neither team would, like, they put up big scores there, but I wasn't blown away by either team. But when you're going into a game that you probably know you're going to win, is it probably no surprise that you don't come out all guns blazing?
Yeah, look, I suppose there's 2 ways of looking at that, Shane, you know, and from Wexford and Cork's point of view, you can't go into those games anyway off or a little bit kind of cocky or arrogant. Like we saw like Antrim were a point up at half time in Corrigan Park. You know, Kerry were put up a massive show in the first half against a strong wind, you know, and obviously the 3 goals towards the end probably put a gloss on it for Wexford. So I think, yeah, they're in a great position. They came through their preliminary quarterfinals. I suppose the big thing for them then Saturday night, Sunday morning was recovery and getting the bodies right, because they knew exactly who they were facing into in 7 days' time. So I think Ciaran Kingston, Darragh Egan would be they would have been coming out of both games saying, right, job done. Now, lads, heads on Galway and Clare, and these are the big ones. And I suppose, look, I'm sure they would have trained well. They would have done very little in training this week. All about recovery, all about getting the bodies feeling fresh and ready to go on Saturday evening. So, do you know what? It's two great games, and 2 games I'm really, really looking forward to.
Yeah, so from your point of view, Ciaran, I just looking at some of the quotes from Ciaran Kingston after, and he goes, we lost the middle third in the first half. We got control of it in the second half. And that's true. But would that not be a concern that, you know, Antrim are operating in Joe McDonough this year, and if you're losing the middle third to them, you know, what's going to happen when you face Galway?
Well, Ciaran, it has to be a major concern, because, you know, we chatted about it last week. Myself and Richie, we were both in agreement that, you know, Antrim would shove it on to Cork, and as Richie said, they were a point up at half time. And I suppose it was the last third that Cork kind of went away. But I suppose the more alarming one, really, they conceded 2-19, 2 cheap enough all goals. And I can remember Malloy even early in the second half, you know, he was throwing the ball, or Cork defenders put the ball over the bar, you know, and I'm sitting back and you're saying, right, and they're heading in now to a quarter-final of an All-Ireland. So it has to be worrying. You know, and Cork, to be fair, up until this point, I suppose they have been consistent, meaning they haven't been consistently good. But when you look at the forwards, Harmony, Kingston, O'Flynn, Lehane, Connolly, Jack O'Connor, Mahoney, Patrick Horrigan and Conor Cahalan, they have about 9 forwards there, Shane. If they get 6 and 4 come to the party, then they're there with an old chance. That's the puzzling thing about Cork. They have still super forwards. They're probably, next to Limerick, in my own opinion, they have the best set of forwards. But they seem to be lacking. And, you know, at this stage of the championship, you want to be kind of showing a bit of flow, showing a bit of consistency. And, okay, we all know we only can beat what's in front of us. You know, so they're flaky-ish, and that's probably a hard thing to say. But, you know, I'm not convinced yet. But yet again, on the other side of me, if those forwards can come. And the big one for me that's kind of a worrying aspect for Cork, when they defend, they don't defend in groups or packs. You know, the forwards take the easy option. You know, put a ball over the bar, lovely, looks well, and then job done. So they seem to kind of find it hard to connect. You know, defending starts from 15 back to 2. And if they got that area of their game, and that takes work, if they got that area of their game, then they could throw themselves seriously in the mix.
But when you see that, like you mentioned, Keelan Malloy going through and hopping a ball over a lad's head and scoring a point, he was also able to coast into the area for a goal at the end of the first half, or some way during the first half, cut back in, still no real tackle on him. And you wonder, is asking a 20-year-old to be the sweeper, you know, it does, obviously it's not really Mark Coleman's game either. You just wonder, like, you can run down the centre of that Cork defence and you're not too worried about getting killed, are you, Ciaran?
No, and that's what I'm saying. You know, there were 2 cheap goals, Shane. You know, and defended poorly. And I suppose, you know, you can talk about systems until the cows come home. And it's so important in the modern game that whatever system suits you, that you feel the need to implement to get the best out of you, that's a given. But you can't forget the basics. The basics must come first. And part of basics are when you're defending. You know, there's an art in defending right. But 9 times out of 10, it'll only kind of manifest itself if you're right up here. And Cork seem to struggle in that area for some reason or another.
Yeah, so Richie, can they do anything about that? I mean, if Mark Coleman's not going to become a giant overnight, Kieran Joyce is 20, you can't expect him to be killing lads who are, you know, seasoned veterans. So what can they do about that?
To be honest, Shane, from where I'm sitting, there's very little they can do about it, because I suppose they're not, as you mentioned there, Mark Coleman, Joyce, you know, they're young guys, they're not big, they're not in physique, so they're not going to put someone sitting on their arse if they're coming through the middle. I suppose the only way that they can do it is probably, you know, perfect the art of defending then, with regards to kind of putting their man, you know, out to the side, or kind of making them play the ball, overplay the ball. You know, you have Damien Cahalan there, who's probably the tallest and the most physical in the Cork setup. So, you know, I think Cork's, motto probably at the weekend will be to prevent Galway from getting the ball, and stopping them and not giving them the opportunity to run down the middle. But like, I'm sure Henry was at that game at the weekend, and I can guarantee you he's looking this week at ways of kind of getting at that Cork defence, because I do, like as Ciaran said, without a doubt, probably the best set of forwards out there after Limerick, but definitely their backs are there to be got at, and I think that's where Henry will see the winning and losing of this game.
Yeah. Okay.
Shane,
well, look, go ahead, Ciaran.
Even that instant, right? That particular point, I watched it very closely, and you don't have to be a crane, right? Meaning you don't have to be huge. A good defender would spot it, smell it, and quench it straight away. But they seem to be lacking that bit of a drive for some reason or other, and I can't put my finger on it. And but it wouldn't take a whole pile of tweaking for Cork to become very good, is my point. And if they kind of got the basics right.
Well, we've plenty more coming on the show. We're going to have the tactics board, like you can see there. We're going to have clips from interviews that I did today with Grode Hegarty and also Joe Canning. And if you want to see those, come to patreon.com/OurGame. We'll have loads to talk about there. See the full show at patreon.com/OurGame.